Right now, there's a soldier somewhere in the world checking a screen instead of checking the shadows. The United States alone has spent over $2 trillion building the most sophisticated battlefield awareness system in human history. We have drones that can read a license plate from 60,000 feet. We have satellites that never sleep. We have AI targeting systems that can predict troop movements before the commanding officer has issued the order. We call it the God view, the ability to see everything, know everything, and strike before an enemy can even draw breath. Military strategists have built careers around it. Defense contractors have built empires on it. And for 3 generations of warfare, it worked. Desert, urban terrain, open mountain, it worked. But here is the part they never put in the briefing. There is one environment on this planet, covering over 7% of Earth's land surface, where that entire trillion-dollar architecture doesn't just fail, it disappears, quietly at first, and then all at once. What you are about to see is not a theory, it is happening right now, and it is deciding the future of every armed force on Earth. Let's slow down, because most people miss this part, and it is the key to everything that follows. The God view was never really about seeing everything. It was about the belief that you could, and belief in warfare is load-bearing. When a soldier steps off a transport onto a modern battlefield, they are carrying more than 60 pounds of gear. They are carrying an invisible 60 pounds of confidence. Confidence that the satellite is watching, that command has a clear picture, that the radio will connect on the first try. That confidence is a force multiplier. It makes people faster, bolder, more decisive. It compresses fear into something manageable. But here's where it gets interesting. That same confidence becomes the single most dangerous thing you can carry into terrain that was designed, by millions of years of evolution, to destroy it. The jungle does not attack your weapons first, it attacks your certainty. And once your certainty is gone, everything else collapses like a building whose foundation just turned to water. You aren't losing to an enemy, you are losing to the thing you were trained to trust. Most soldiers don't realize this until the jungle has already decided their fate.
There's a specific moment every soldier remembers, the moment the silence changes. Meet Lieutenant Sarah Calloway, 29 years old, Fort Bragg trained, Ranger School graduate, top 4% of her class. She carries 62 pounds of the most advanced carbon fiber load-bearing equipment ever issued to a field operator. Her encrypted communication array alone costs more than most people's cars. Her night vision suite, 3rd generation, thermal capable, cost $40,000. She has run drills in Mojave heat, Arctic cold, urban kill houses, and open desert. She is, by every measurable metric, the pinnacle of modern military training. She enters the Philippine canopy with a sense of purpose so strong you can almost see it radiating off her. Most people stop here and think she is ready. But Colonel James Reeves, who has spent 15 years advising joint operations in this exact terrain, told me something that stopped me cold. He said, "The jungle doesn't care about your resume. It cares about what you do when the resume stops working." Sarah's resume stops working in approximately 40 minutes. 20 meters away, watching her from the shadows, are 2 people Sarah will never see coming. Mateo Cruz is 51 years old, born in Negros Occidental. He has been navigating Philippine jungle since he was 7 years old, following his grandfather through Kogon grass at midnight. He carries almost nothing, a blade, a canteen, and a hand-drawn map that looks like something from another century, because it is. Beside him is Diwata Reyes, 34, former Philippine Army Scout Ranger, who speaks 4 regional dialects and once navigated 32 kilometers of mountain jungle in 0 visibility without a single electronic device. Together, they don't look like the future of warfare. They look like the past. And that, right there, is the ego inversion that breaks every Western military assumption at the root. Because what Mateo and Diwata understand, and what Sarah does not yet, is this. The jungle doesn't hide the enemy. It hides certainty. And without certainty, 60 pounds of advanced gear becomes an anchor. Sarah has a $40,000 optic. Diwata can locate a human position from the direction a bird stops singing. Both of these things are true at the same time. Sergeant Marcus Webb has been on 32 combat deployments across 4 continents: Iraq, Afghanistan, Mali, the Korean DMZ. He told me this, and I want you to hear it exactly as he said it. The desert tells you what's coming. The jungle tells you nothing until it's too late. The silence inside a Philippine rainforest is not peaceful silence, it is loaded silence. Every sound that exists, the drip of water from a leaf, the distant collapse of a branch, the sudden halt of birdsong, is a sentence in a language that Sarah was never taught to read. She has been in the Philippine canopy for less than 40 minutes, and the system is already failing in sequence. First, her GPS has entered an 8 to 12-minute lag cycle because the triple-layer canopy is absorbing her signal. Second, the humidity is registering on her thermal optic as ambient noise, gray static where there should be crisp silhouettes. Third, her radio's last confirmed contact with command was 11 minutes ago. Fourth, and this is the critical one, she doesn't realize any of this yet. She still believes the system is working. In the jungle, that moment of false belief is not a comfort, it is a timer. In open desert, soldiers think in kilometers. They establish sight lines, triangulate positions, and build mental maps that mirror the digital ones on their screens. In the jungle, distance doesn't shrink, it evaporates. This is what experts call the visibility collapse. And most people stop at the surface definition, you can't see far. But here is the deeper truth that almost nobody discusses. It's not just that you can't see the enemy, it's that you lose the ability to anticipate. When your brain cannot process incoming visual data, when every shape is simultaneously a threat and a shadow, when every meter of ground is a new negotiation between what you see and what you fear, it stops projecting forward. It locks onto the immediate. 5 meters feels like 50. 50 meters might as well be a mountain range. Sarah is now operating in what military psychologists call proximity tunnel, a state where the immediate threat horizon collapses so dramatically that strategic thinking becomes physiologically impossible. She is no longer playing chess. She is playing a game where the board keeps shifting and no one told her the new rules. She isn't running out of skill. She is running out of the environment that made her skills work. Here is the part that should terrify every defense contractor sitting in a comfortable briefing room right now. Sarah raises her $40,000 thermal optic to her eye. At this temperature, in this humidity, the Philippine rainforest is producing ambient heat signatures of 94 degrees Fahrenheit across every surface, the trees, the mud, the air itself. Her optic was designed to distinguish a human body, 98.6 degrees, against a cool, dry background. But there is no cool, dry background. There is only heat. The display shows her a gray, pulsing fog, punctuated by dark vine shapes that look, with terrifying regularity, exactly like crouching human limbs. She is scanning for Mateo. She has unknowingly swept past him 3 times in the last 90 seconds. He is 4 meters off her right shoulder. Her technology is not just failing, it is actively deceiving her. And this, according to Dr. Lila Santos, a tactical neuroscientist at the Philippine Military Academy, is the precise moment a soldier transitions from hunter to variable. The brain, she says, cannot sustain hypervigilance on false data. It begins shutting non-essential systems down. And the system it shuts down first is the one she needs most: judgment. Now the layered collapse accelerates, and it moves into the communication layer. Sarah reaches for her radio handset to coordinate a basic flanking movement with Marcus's fire team, positioned 30 meters to her left. She keys the transmission and speaks. What Marcus hears, if he hears anything at all, is a 3-second burst of static and then silence. The canopy has done what no enemy jammer could accomplish. The triple-layered biomass of hardwood, palm frond, and moisture-laden air has absorbed her signal completely. She tries again on the secondary frequency. More static. She switches to the emergency burst transmitter. A short delay, then the red light. Not delivered. This next part sounds obvious, but modern armies don't just use communication. They are communication. The unit is not a group of individuals who coordinate. It is a single distributed organism whose nervous system runs through digital protocol. When that nervous system goes silent, the organism doesn't slow down, it begins to dissolve. Sarah feels for the first time the cold, specific weight of what Matteo already knew at the mission briefing. Out here, the radio is not a tool, it's a psychological dependency. And dependencies, when removed without warning, produce one thing: panic. 30 meters away, Sergeant Marcus Webb is going through the same realization in parallel isolation. His unit, a 4-person element that functions like a precision instrument in open terrain, has just become 4 individual human beings making individual decisions inside a green void. This next part sounds obvious, but almost nobody talks about it. The danger isn't the enemy. The danger is the gap between what each soldier thinks is happening and what is actually happening. Marcus believes Sarah's team is pushing left. Sarah's team has stopped moving entirely. Neither knows what the other knows. In a command-dependent structure, this gap is manageable. You call command and reorient in seconds. But there is no command. There is no call. There is only the jungle making its own decisions. Matteo's team, meanwhile, has already adjusted. Diwata makes a hand signal so subtle it looks like she is brushing a leaf from her arm. 3 people respond instantly, shifting position without a sound, without a word, without a moment of hesitation. No radio, no command, no gap. The unit hasn't fragmented because it was never built around the assumption that it could communicate in real time. That assumption was always the weakness. Matteo's team simply never had it. The jungle is not a backdrop. This deserves to be said twice, loudly. The jungle is not a backdrop. It is an active combatant, and it attacks your biology long before it attacks your position. The temperature inside a Philippine rainforest at midday operates like wearing a wet wool shroud inside a running engine, and your body adapts by burning through resources it cannot replenish at pace. Sarah's core temperature has been rising for the past 2 hours at a rate she hasn't consciously registered because the rise has been gradual. 1 degree here, half a degree there, but the body keeps score. Her hydration level is down 7%. Her fine motor control, the control required to operate a zipper, read a map scale, or make a precise trigger pull, has degraded measurably. Reaction time has slipped by 340 milliseconds. That number sounds small until you understand that the human threat recognition window, the gap between seeing something and responding to it, operates in exactly that range. She is now operating outside her own reaction window. She is running a marathon she never agreed to enter, carrying equipment designed for a race that is happening somewhere else entirely.
Here is the uncomfortable science behind what's happening inside Sarah's skull right now. In extreme humidity, above 85%, the human body's primary cooling mechanism, sweat evaporation, stops working efficiently. The moisture in the air has nowhere to go. Heat builds inside the body's core at an accelerated rate. But here is where it gets deeply interesting and deeply unsettling. Heat doesn't just slow your muscles, it systematically targets your prefrontal cortex, the region of your brain responsible for decision-making, impulse control, and risk assessment. Research published by the Army Research Institute of Environmental Medicine has shown that at a core temperature just 1.5 degrees Celsius above baseline, decision-making accuracy drops by up to 30%.
At 2 degrees above baseline, complex problem-solving becomes functionally impossible. Sarah is currently at 1.8 degrees above her baseline. She doesn't know this. She cannot know this. There is no diagnostic for it in the field. And the jungle is counting on exactly that. It isn't trying to kill her with a blade or a bullet. It is dismantling her from the inside out, one invisible degree at a time. By the time she understands what is happening, the decision-making window she needed to respond has already closed. This is where the collapse becomes irreversible if nothing intervenes. When your body is failing and your technology is dead and your unit is fragmented, your mind does something ancient and automatic. It fills the gaps with threat. Every snap of a branch becomes the footfall of an approaching combatant. Every pause in the wind feels like the held breath before an ambush. Every shadow develops intention. Military psychologists call this hypervigilant threat inflation, a state where the brain, deprived of reliable sensory data, begins generating its own threat library. But here is the brutal irony that almost nobody discusses. The more threats your brain manufactures, the more energy and attention you spend on phantoms. And the more you spend on phantoms, the less capacity you have for the actual threat. Sarah has spent 30 minutes reacting to a monkey, a bird, and twice her own reflection in a pool of standing water. She has fired no rounds. She has moved very little. She is exhausted entirely by what is not there. She has become her own most effective adversary. And here is the deepest truth in this entire story. The jungle didn't have to break her. It simply gave her enough silence to do it herself. Most soldiers never talk about this part. Colonel Reeves brought it up unprompted in our conversation, and it stopped me entirely. He said, "The worst thing that happens to a modern soldier in the jungle isn't fear. It's the moment they realize that everything they're good at doesn't work here." That is identity collapse. Sarah is not just losing a tactical engagement. She is losing the self-concept that sustained her through Ranger School, through 32 weeks of SEER training, through every evaluation board that told her she was exceptional. That self-concept was built in environments where competence was measurable, where performance had a score, where excellence had a metric. Out here, there is no measurement. There is only outcome. She is a soldier trained for precision, now fighting in terrain that punishes precision and rewards adaptation. And adaptation was never in the manual she studied. It exists only in the cellular memory of people who were born into uncertainty and never needed a way out of it. People like Mateo, like Diwata, like every Filipino scout who learned to read a forest before they learned to read a page. This is the ego inversion at the heart of modern warfare. The most thoroughly trained soldier in the world is being outmaneuvered by two people carrying almost nothing. And the gear is not the reason. The dependency is. While Sarah's unit is fragmenting, Mateo's team is operating with the quiet efficiency of a biological system. No wasted movement, no redundant communication, no dependency on technology that can be taken away. This is the payoff. This is what 15 years of watching modern armies struggle in this terrain has been building toward. The Philippine Doctrine. The Philippines is an archipelago of over 7,600 islands, much of it covered in terrain so dense and varied that no two valleys fight the same engagement. This didn't merely influence Filipino military thinking, it created it. For centuries, Filipino warriors fought colonial powers that outgunned them at every turn. Spanish forces, American forces, Japanese forces. Each time the response was the same. Don't fight their war, fight the terrain's war. When you cannot match the enemy's technology, you become the technology. When you cannot overpower their communication network, you eliminate your dependency on communication entirely. The Philippine Doctrine wasn't born in a Pentagon think tank. It was born in a place where certainty was always a lie, Foreign power was always temporary, and the only truth was the ground beneath your feet. Matteo didn't learn this doctrine, he inherited it. Here is the operational architecture that makes Matteo's team so effective that modern military observers have begun formally studying it. Instead of large, coordinated forces that depend on real-time communication to function, forces exactly like Sarah's, the Philippine approach is built on what practitioners call distributed autonomy. Small units, 3 to 5 people maximum, each unit trained not to receive orders in the field, but to operate on pre-established mutual understanding. They rehearse not tactics, but decisions. The central question in every pre-mission preparation is this: if communication fails, and it will, what does each of us know to do without being told? The answer to that question is rehearsed until it stops being a thought and becomes a reflex. Diwata can read Matteo's position, speed, and intent from the angle of a displaced leaf 15 meters ahead of her. Matteo knows exactly where Diwata will be in 4 minutes without looking, because they have rehearsed this terrain until the terrain itself became their shared language. This is not intuition, it is not instinct, it is methodology. And almost no Western military doctrine has fully adopted it, because doing so requires surrendering the one thing Western command structures value above all else: control. For Matteo, the jungle is not a challenge to overcome, it is a strategic weapon to be wielded with intention. He uses the visibility collapse to mask movement between 3 positions simultaneously, creating the impression of a larger force where there is none. He knows Sarah's thermal optics struggles with ambient heat signatures, so he moves along creek beds where running water creates cooling interference patterns that register on her display as dead zones. He knows her radio operates in 8 to 12-minute lag cycles, so every significant positioning decision he makes happens inside that lag window, invisible to command, even if command is listening. He knows that after 90 minutes in this terrain, her unit is experiencing early-stage biological degradation, so he waits. He doesn't attack. He allows the terrain to attack on his behalf. Colonel Reeves told me, awareness beats equipment every single time, but the next level, the part nobody wants to hear, is that patience beats awareness. Matteo doesn't need to win, he just needs to wait until Sarah has already lost. What makes this doctrine transcendent is that it requires no superior firepower, no advanced technology, and no external support. It requires only one thing: to belong to the place you are fighting in.
And here is the twist that most military historians bury in footnotes and most documentaries skip entirely, because it does not have a dramatic visual. The methodology Matteo uses, the internal understanding protocol, wasn't invented in a jungle. It was codified in one, but it was invented in the human nervous system. It is, at its core, a 6-stage training method for building nonverbal, non-electronic unit cohesion under extreme stress. It begins with what practitioners call sensory recalibration, a deliberate, weeks-long process of stripping away reliance on devices to restore trust in biological perception. No phones, no GPS, no maps for the first 72 hours. Just human beings learning to read each other and their environment the way Matteo's grandfather read it. Dr. Leela Santos has spent 11 years documenting this protocol, mapping how it rewires the brain's threat processing pathways and builds what she calls a nervous system for the unit, not just the individual. Elite training programs in Norway, South Korea, and quiet corners of U.S. Special Operations Command have begun incorporating elements of this method, but Matteo's version, the original, is still the most complete, and it is the subject of what you are about to see next.
This is not a story about a Philippine jungle in a training exercise. This is a preview of where global conflict is heading, and it is moving at a speed that should make every defense strategist deeply uncomfortable. As warfare continues to shift toward environments that satellites cannot properly map, that AI targeting cannot parse, and that drone surveillance cannot effectively penetrate, equatorial rainforests, mountain cave systems, dense vertical urban terrain, the power dynamic between technological force and adaptive force is inverting. The RAND Corporation has published analysis noting that the contested terrain advantage, the ability to fight effectively in environment-dominant battlefields, is increasingly the decisive variable in asymmetric engagement outcomes. The world's most technologically advanced militaries are discovering that a $200 million fighter jet is irrelevant when the enemy never stands in the open. The $40,000 thermal optic is useless when background temperature neutralizes it, and the radio is just a paperweight when the canopy decides it doesn't want to participate. The real lesson of the Philippine Doctrine, applied globally, is this: the battlefield of the future will not be decided by who has the best technology. It will be decided by who has the fewest dependencies.
Sarah finds Mateo at hour 3, not because she outmaneuvered him, because he allowed her to. He steps out of the undergrowth 4 feet in front of her, no weapon raised, no aggression, just presence. And the expression on her face is one that Colonel Reeves described to me as the most important expression in modern military education. It is not fear, it is not defeat, it is recognition. The uncomfortable truth arrives all at once, the way all important truths do. The system she trusted to protect her was the same system that made her visible, predictable, and fragile. Her GPS was broadcasting her position to anyone who knew how to read displacement patterns. Her thermal optic blinded her to what her unaided eyes, properly trained, might have caught. Her radio dependency shattered unit cohesion the moment it failed. Every dollar spent on her equipment was spent on a promise, and the jungle simply didn't honor it. The God view was never a view from above. It was a ceiling, a beautiful, expensive ceiling that collapsed the moment she walked into the one place on Earth that has no interest in what you paid for it. She looks at Mateo. He says nothing. He doesn't need to. The terrain has already said everything. The ultimate truth is this: the most dangerous thing in modern warfare is not the enemy, it is the dependency. The system you trust to protect you will, in certain terrain, become the precise thing that exposes you. The God view was always a promise made by people who never had to deliver it in a Philippine rainforest at 96 degrees. But here is where the real forward momentum lives, the part that changes the equation entirely. Mateo's internal understanding protocol has 6 stages, documented, mapped, tested across 3 continents, and it works not by making soldiers stronger, but by making them need less. Stage 1 alone produces measurable changes in unit cohesion within 72 hours, no electronics required. Dr. Lida Santos has documented all 6 stages. Elite units are quietly adopting elements of this method right now in training programs that don't make press releases and don't appear in defense budgets. We have the full breakdown, we have the methodology, and it is the subject of the next video. If you want to see exactly how a human being is trained to function when the entire system goes dark, how the brain is rewired for the terrain instead of the technology, hit the video on your screen right now. The minimalist protocol is waiting. The lights are still on, for now. Stay sharp.